So this is it. This is the last category that we are doing. This is our game of the year. This
Yeah,
is slightly different from the other ones, where we want a ordered list of five.
yeah.
Um,
So we always.
yeah. Looking at this list, This is basically as I go through the year, I just keep this list and add everything I play on it.
Like,
So
yeah, any game that we've played, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff on here. So I'll just read out this entire list. The list is Half-Life Alyx, Animal Crossing New Horizons, The Room VR, Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Good Job, Cloudpunk, XCOM Chimera Squad, Modern Warfare Warzone, Super Hot Mind Control Delete, Necrobarista, Spiritfarer, Tell Me Why, Paradise Killer, Other Side, Hades, Shapes.io, Cyberpunk 2077, Fall Guys, Risk of Rain 2, Among Us, Star Wars Squadrons, Fuser, Phasmaphobia, and The Solitaire Conspiracy. So that's everything.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about most of these games on here. Let's just
Yeah.
call out stuff that we haven't talked about. Good Job is that Switch game that came out, directly after a Nintendo Direct, I think.
I don't
And
even remember what this is. But
it's a it's I mean, I think it's designed for co-op, but it's like your main character is like the like male toilet symbol, and they work in an office, and it's about pulling stuff around, and
right, yeah. I
that game
remember this
is
trailer.
super fun as co-op, and it works really, really well, and I highly recommend it if you can co-op with somebody. That's a very, very good game.
Yeah.
XCOM Chimera Squad, yes, there was an XCOM game this year that I just didn't put enough time into, really.
It was broken for me, so I didn't play it.
Yeah, it was kind of busted for you, and it broke me at one point.
It fucked me too hard too many times, and I just stopped playing
Yeah,
it. It was...
I do want to go back to it again, because I did put a lot of time into it, but
I hear it's fixed now, but I don't... I'll see if I have time, I might go back to it and see if it's fixed, but...
yeah, if the issue I had
Yeah.
with it was fixed eventually, but again, it kind of like you kind of lose a level of trust at that point. You're like, am I going to put our 20 hours into this and get it busted? Modern Warfare Warzone, I played a little bit more of that than I expected this year. It's a good battle royale game, and I seemed to not suck at it, which was surprising because it's a Call of
That's
Duty
surprising
game.
for a Call of
Yeah.
Duty game that's all Twitch. Like,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
normally-
Yep. Super Hot Mind Control Delete is a wave-based version of Super Hot, with like a kind of weird ASCII dungeon mechanic for progression, which is actually
Sure.
it's pretty good, but it's more Super Hot. So if you like Super Hot, that's that there. Did all that. Shapes.io, we did a video of it. It is a you and ass conveyor belt game distilled
conveyor
down
belt game.
into
Yeah, it's the most like stripped back conveyor belt game where it's literally just like you're combining colors and
Yeah.
shapes, and yeah, it's nothing fancy. It's not like Factorio where you can get like fucking spider bots.
So
or
here's
whatever.
the
It's literally
thing.
just
The thing that
conveyor
actually
belts for the joy of conveyor belts.
yeah, the thing that actually that game does really, really well is gives you continual goals for progression. So
Sure, yeah.
I finally dared to buy Factorio this year, and I spent a bunch of time in the tutorial. There's like 5 big tutorial levels with like end goals of like, here's a thing you need to get, and I finished all the tutorial levels and then started a new game and realized that not having a goal is the problem for those games for
Yeah,
me.
it paralyzes you.
Yeah, because you're like, well, what the fuck am I gonna do? Like, I can like all at this point.
Yeah.
I know the end game. Like, I need to build a spaceship. But like,
Open world paralysis is a well-known problem, like for a
Yeah.
lot of people. Where
So-
they just get given a whole mess of tools in an open world and they don't know what the fuck to do. Like,
yeah, but Shapes.io like gives you progressive tools to be like, okay, I can focus on my main thing and then focus on all my side stuff that I need to do. So it's a
Yeah.
really good version of one. Like, there was a moment where this was in my top 5 this year. I really enjoyed that game. We talked about Cyberpunk and other stuff. We've talked about that. We didn't
Yeah.
really talk about Fall Guys. You put a lot of time into that game this year.
Yeah, I played a lot of Fall Guys, especially in Season 1. It sort of like fell off towards Season 2. Like I stopped playing it because the people I was playing with also stopped playing it.
Right.
But it was a really unique thing to see people take the idea of like what is the genre right now, like the Battle Royale style game, and take it and strip it back from like guns and all that sort of stuff and say, what could we do with the idea of a battle royale game? And people just decided that instead of doing combat, they would turn it into a game show with a like Takeshi's Castle hole in the wall style set up to it with these weird little bean people.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. Like that's all it was, like, was just a bunch of really cool mini games that were really fun to play because the physics were so fucked up and moving around as your little bean dude was really weird.
Yeah, like the fact that it didn't control well was kind of almost a bonus. It
controlled fine, but it was more about how can you use the controls to your advantage.
Yeah,
like you could do really crazy stuff with the mid-air dive that people got really good at towards the end, like being able to use the dive to change your momentum and stuff like that. And then it got like stale for a bit, and then they added some new games, and that was pretty cool. And then they did the whole procedural update where all the levels could be like mix matched and like changed in different ways.
Yeah,
which actually really helped because it meant that every game got like a kind of reboot.
I really felt like the dev team were not ready for how big that game got that quickly.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
Where they were just like, okay, they had a plan to do updates, obviously, but like not at the speed that I think that people wanted them.
Yeah,
it got that much bigger. That was very much one of those games where I was cursing that game out as I was starting a new game, like constantly. I was like, "You motherfucker, knocked me off this fucking thing!" As I was saying, "Play again." Which I think is
it was really good at making you just keep going. Yeah, it was really fun. It was just really fun. Like it wasn't super in depth or anything like that. It was just a really cool platformer with a neat idea.
Yep.
And cool little bean people that people like dressing up as. Like that was it. It was really fun though.
Those costumes are nightmarish though. Some of them are just oof.
There was my favourite one that came out that I've not seen since there was one called Kato Roboto it's like a big mech suit with like a Mega Man style buster gun on it, like a Mega Buster. But the head is like a little cat bean, but it's not like a cat where it's just like, oh, it's the bean with cat ears. It's like an actual cat. You can see its paws like over the top of the mech suit.
Is that a crossover? Is that from
I don't actually know.
Like that Kato Roboto is a game. Know. It is a game.
I mean,
it's
maybe
it's
cool,
like
though.
a 2D platformer. Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense. But yeah, they did a lot of crossover.
Yeah, they did
costumes and stuff like that, so that would make sense. But yeah, it was really cool.
The Room VR was a really good. I really like the Room series, and it translates really, really well to VR, especially because they kept the like FMV stuff that's there, and it actually integrates pretty well.
Yeah,
and it's got a pretty good help system in there as well. Like all the like everything you like from the mobile game translates really well into VR, except for the fact that you're physically grabbing stuff and manipulating it. It's very cool. Briscarine 2, that came out, right? That did come out.
Yeah. That the 1.0 came out in 2020, and yeah, that's just like a really good, more traditional sort of roguelike as opposed to Hades, where it's literally just all about doing the run and like what you can get on the run and how far you can progress, but it mixes it up with like, it's got a really unique art style where it's kind of like washed out, but at the same time sort of cell shaded. It's really
I like
cool
how that game
looking,
looks.
and
Sure.
It's a really good looking game, and the characters are all unique in terms of their abilities and how they play and like what sort of quote unquote build that they're good with. So you get a lot of variability between like unlocking different characters and trying different stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff you can do in that game in terms of like binding items to do different things is kind of crazy, to where you can get it's got the good roguelike thing of you can get your god run where you're basically like untouchable and you're killing stuff in one hit.
Sure.
And that's really funny. Or you can get the situation where you're just totally screwed. But yeah, it's a really good one of those sort of roguelikes if you want that. It's definitely one of the better ones that I've played.
And works well in co-op as well.
Yeah, so I did it with 4-player co-op and it's great. It's really funny. But yeah, it's a super good roguelike, and I had a lot of fun with it this year.
Yeah. I'll also briefly mention here in that same vein, Deep Rock Galactic was a real late game late year one for me, but I'm having a lot of fun playing that game, kind of for the same reasons. Where it's like as 4-player co-op, it's very good. Among Us, like we don't need to talk about really, but like
everybody knows what Among Us
game.
Was.
It's been interesting to describe other games as yes, it's Among Us, but so like we spent a bunch of people from work spent I think it was 2 sessions with Project Winter, which is like Among Us on acid, where it's just like this is so much more complicated, but with a really cool conceit. So yeah, doing that.
Among Us became the touchstone for the like hidden roles genre.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you just sort of said, "Oh yeah, it's an Among Us style game."
Yeah,
because we played that Unfortunate Spaceman as well.
Yeah, which was
there's a bunch of those. That was fun. I really liked that.
That was chaos, but yes. Star Wars Squadrons, I like this, and it's weird as well because we had 2 different experiences with this game as well. Where because I played that game in VR, and I kept meaning to go back to it, but it is a very cool. It's a really good VR experience. It really, really is.
Sure, yeah. Like I look forward to trying it when I can.
Yeah, totally. Cool. The problem for me is it started a worrying thing in the back of my brain, which is were all space combat games eventually the same thing? Where like I put like 4-ish hours into it, I think 4 or 5 hours into it, and I was like, okay, is the rest of this game just dogfights? Like, is that like there's stuff happening and there's explosions and there's like larger scale battles, but like is all of this just dogfights where it's the same thing constantly?
I mean, yeah,
yes, but like it manages.
Yes, but there were games that did it. There were games that did it better. Squadrons is unique because it's the first one of those in what seems like forever.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like we've not had like a space combat game in ages, but there are like even going back as like far as Free Space 2. Like Free Space 2 at least had some other interesting ideas in it that it did along with the dogfighting stuff. Yeah. So yeah, when you look at the Star Wars Squadrons, it's basic in terms of like it's just a dogfighting game, but it is a good one.
Oh yeah, totally.
And you don't get a lot of them.
Yeah. I think Free Space as well, I think worked for me because it was there was a plot that I cared about, and also they just every single time it feels like for that Free Space 2 campaign, they just managed to change stuff up just as you think it's getting a bit samey, and you're like, and now you work for this squadron with this ship that's totally different, and yeah, it's cool.
You do a bunch of different things, and
I want to go back to that. I do want to go back to that.
There's some cooler like not dogfighty objectives later on. But a lot of the early to mid stuff is spent in dogfights, which fair enough. But there is some cool stuff later. But yeah,
and also fair play to them for getting not only a VR game that really works, but a VR game that works as a space flight sim on a controller. Like I played that game with a controller. I didn't need to, and it works really, really well. So they really did a good job with that.
It was good. The thing that I liked when talking to you about it, especially in VR, was like you had the realization purely by being in VR and actually having to do it yourself. You realize how shit TIE fighters were.
They're fucking terrible. Holy shit!
Yeah, it was like it's something that if you know the lore and stuff like that, you understand. But for someone to just be able to like because it's in VR and you understand how claustrophobic that cabin is, how shit the view window is, like all that sort of stuff. You just went, man, these were awful. Like, they were terrible starfighters.
I briefly mentioned it in the podcast when we were talking about it, but like the fact that they start you with the X-Wing, which has this entire 180-degree cockpit, where they teach you very quickly, especially if you're in VR, that you can look and see where your target is and then bring the ship round to meet it. So like a lot of that time I was looking up or up to the right or whatever it is to try and track stuff, and then they dump you in a TIE fighter and it's like you have this tiny circle and you can't see shit, and also you've got no shields. Go nuts. You're just like, oh, that was and it was immediate. Like I didn't get it until as soon as I launched, and I was like, oh, okay,
you got
shit.
You got nothing.
It's great. Fuser again is a late one for us who picked up just at the end of the
awesome.
year.
I really like Fuser.
Really good. It's I think we very briefly mentioned it mechanics, but
when we talked about it mechanics, that's the key of that game. I know it has like like the visuals or whatever, and like the music choice is cool and everything like that. But the core of that game, mechanically speaking, is what is interesting about it, which we talked about mechanics. But
they roll out new features. Or
yeah, it's surprising
bits.
how much of it there is. That is the other thing. Yeah.
They keep adding stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, we're doing this as well, right? Okay, and they make it work in that. Yeah, they just make what is a very complicated idea work really well and is understandable by your average person like myself. It's good. Yeah,
like it was cool. I didn't expect it when they like started bringing out like virtual instruments and a whole bunch of that. It's like, oh, I didn't even know this was in this game. That's pretty cool. And it's,
Phasmaphobia was another one that was like took over the internet for a while.
Yeah, that was your Twitch game for a couple of months.
Yeah, we played a chunk of that game. It's really, like it's not. It's weird how a game that looks. It's not the best looking game in the world. I think I don't think it's an unfair statement to say.
Your base Unity sort of experience.
But like the idea that they can still make that game, like that game is not scary, really.
No, not really.
It's more like it's more haunted housey than like a horror game.
Yeah.
Where like, and you're kind of
it can be scary, but it's not 100% scary at times. Yeah.
And you really do make your own. Like, I cannot imagine soloing that game. Like, you need to go into that with a bunch of people. You need to do the positional
doing it with
audio
friends
stuff.
Is the key to that game. Yeah.
Like, I almost added this game into best mechanics for the positional audio stuff because I think that game has started something where it is now an option
really cool,
for people to go. And it's a dangerous thing, right? Because you look at, I mean, Phasmophobia blew up in a way that, again, the devs did not expect. So that game was broken for a large chunk of the start of its life. Yeah. Because they were doing their own voice communication, they need to manage servers. They can't just offload that onto something like Discord. They need to do that themselves in order to be able to pull off the game.
Yeah.
And it was just fucked for a long time. But once they got it down, and once you got a game running, just the effect of hearing someone on the radio go, oh shit, and then not hearing anything again is
and not being
one
able
of the
to
best moments this year. You can just go, Jeff, nothing. Like, just no noise.
The positional audio stuff's great. I personally really enjoy running into rooms and calling ghosts little bitches. That's a lot of fun. And having them like react to it because of the way that the audio works in that game.
Getting somebody to go into a room, shouting the ghost name and then locking the door is always funny.
It's hilarious. It's so good. The experience I had with it as well, I was playing it with 3 other friends, but one of them was in VR and the rest of us wasn't. That was a really cool experience because it was bizarre for us because we're seeing this like character that has all this like movement, but we're super stationary.
Yep.
So he was like doing a whole bunch of stuff, and it was really funny. But yeah, that game was really interesting to play with a bunch of friends. It was a really a nice little thing to have of like
it was
positional audio works and a spooky ghost game. But yeah.
Also, just briefly mentioning that we played No Man's Sky for the first time in a while this year. And I did it in VR, and that moment where I scared the shit out of you is still one of my favorite things that happened this year. Where
the thing that
no, but like I was playing in VR and Cal wasn't, and he had his menu up, and that's the moment where I realized that those menus are physical objects in like
like in the world.
So like I was still just messing about with my hand controls and just like seeing all this stuff. I just kind of reached out, and apparently the hand came through the menu, and it scared the shit out of
me. The menu and into my face. My favorite moment in that was we were doing something, and we were just playing or whatever, and we were looking for something. I said, "Oh, where is it?" And you said it's there, and I instinctively, because we were playing a video game, was like, "There's not good enough. You need to tell me where it is." And I pulled my menu down and turned around, and you were like physically pointing at it, like with your hand. And I was like, "Oh, right, it's there, right? Okay, that makes sense because you've just done it naturally because that's just how VR works." Like, you go, "It's over there." You're like, "Oh, but that doesn't mean it." Oh, right, you're pointing. Right,
I'm literally pointing over there. It's it's cool. And then the Solitaire Conspiracy, just Bithell Games put out a solitaire game and it's good. Like every part of that sentence is weird, but like I don't know, they did the thing. It's
a good solitaire game, which is interesting.
And that's a solitaire game with VR and faction powers. So Sure.
Who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed?
Thing you could do.
So let's get a 5, and then we can worry about orders. So my guessing, the easy ones, is that Hades is probably going to be in that 5.
Yeah, I think it has to be. I think especially given looking back at all the other categories, it's kind of I would also say that probably the Paradise Killer is probably up there. Yeah, that was going to say
that's probably up there as well. And from here on in, I don't know because looking at my 5 as it stands right now, 2 of them are still in. One of them didn't come out this year, and one of them is still in early access, so it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So here's where we start to get interesting things. Do
you have any strong feelings, or
I'm just looking at this list again, just trying to see.
So my thing would be, I kind of want Final Fantasy VII Remake on there, but I don't want it particularly high up because it fucked up the ending. It fucked up the last bit. Other than the super big reveal at the end, which it nailed, the last bit of that game is really bad. Mm-hmm. So I don't want it too high, but I do want it as a recognition because the rest of that game is fantastic. So I don't mind.
Let's put that there for now.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I'm trying to think what else would be in here. I feel like I've missed something, and I don't know what. I'm just looking back at all these categories just to make sure.
I spent the stuff that. I mean, Yakuza's not on this list if you want Yakuza on it.
Yeah, Yakuza almost made it into a few categories, but I haven't finished it, and I've hit a. So that game is about emulating, or a lot of the mechanics of that game revolve around the fact that Ichi really likes Dragon Quest, and that he's playing a Dragon Quest in his head. And the last batch of stuff I did was go through a multi-leveled sewer dungeon as Ichi goes, I bet you there's some items behind here. And I'm like, it just crossed that point about you're no longer commenting or taking the piss out of or using the mechanics of a different game to do something.
You're just doing the thing.
And that thing is bad. So... And also, I've hit a big difficulty spike that I may be fucked on and may have to roll back about half an hour or maybe an hour to go grind. So I'm like, I like a lot of the 20 hours I've spent with that game, a lot of what I've spent with that game. But my worry is that they may have fucked it just where I am right now.
Sure.
So I'm apprehensive to put it in. But it is really good, and it won't bother some people will not be bothered in the same way I was about that particular bit, but yeah. So here's the thing. This is difficult.
The problem that I have is that because of the year and the way that it ended up, the year was spent for me playing a lot of games that I play socially, so a lot of Destiny, a lot of Apex Legends, and stuff like that, or it was stuff that I hadn't played, that Dead by Daylight and stuff like that, which was also a social game, but it was older, so I can't put it in the game of the year. So there's not a lot of new things to bring to the table that would be on this list.
So when I was looking through my Steam library with ordered by hours spent, I was like, oh yeah, two of the games I spent the most hours with this year were Dead by Daylight and GTA 4, both of which don't count for this list. So I'm like, okay, so what actually? Okay, do we have to have the Cyberpunk conversation, because that game is probably in my top 5, but I really don't want to. Again, it's so hard to talk about this in terms of the game without including all of the surrounding stuff. But the surrounding stuff is so terrible.
When you're talking about giving something a Game of the Year accolade, I don't feel bad about not giving it something, because the problem is that I don't even know there are. When I look at this list, in my it's not in my personal top 5, because. When I think about that game as a game and also as a totality, there are 5 better games than it, I think, that came out this year that I don't want to give it credit when it's done such negative things around it.
Totally.
And also, I think there are other things that could probably deserve it more.
Sure.
Like it's
and that game is at time of recording still in my top 5, low, but it's still there because
I've played a bunch of hours of it, but it's
and I think also for me that game's unique because I don't like those games. I just don't like that type of game, and it's the first one that's
totally
come
fair.
out.
Like you finding a Bethesda game that you want to play is a landmark moment for you.
Totally,
I can understand
exactly. It's important, and still struggling with how I'm going to write a script for that game if it does make it in my top 5, and be like, okay, here are the 17 caveats for this game being on this list. Okay, is Fuser on this?
So I definitely was incredibly impressed by Fuser, and I still really, really like Fuser.
Yeah.
So I don't mind having the conversation about it.
Because here's the thing, I'm looking at this list about the other games that would be here for me, and it's... What was the other... There's another game that was like... Best narrative. Because, for me, I really liked Cloudpunk this year, and I really like Necrobarista. You didn't play either of those games, and...
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't... Cloudpunk you probably wouldn't be into, except Cloudpunk's another one you describe it and it sounds, you need to see that game to really understand why.
Yeah.
And Necrobarista is it is rare when you find a game that feels like it is the pinnacle of a genre, and that is the best visual novel I think that exists, because it really does... It adds a layer of real polish to a genre that is very easy to become formulaic. The fact that that game is entirely in 3D and has the dialogue be in the world and reflective totally changes where that game doesn't feel like a visual novel anymore, even though that's 100% what it is. It's very cool, but is it top 5? I have really enjoyed... God, this sucks. Right, let's go the other way and say games that are definitely not going to be here. Animal Crossing is not there, because that's incredibly disappointing. Even if putting my feelings to one side, would you say Doom Eternal's in the top 5?
I probably would say there are better games than Doom Eternal.
Okay.
I did really like Doom Eternal, but I don't think it's made my top 5, so I'm not gonna... Don't think Chimera Squad's there. I don't think...
Nope.
Good Job's probably not there.
I played that in February and really enjoyed it. I
didn't play Warzone, so I can't...
Yeah, it's also not... It's just a good... Surprisingly good... It was more... That was a surprising one more than anything else that I liked that one as much as... I did really like what they did with Tell Me Why. They went in a direction that shows that even though that is the type of game that Don't Nod make and they're good at it, this took that narrative in a slightly different direction where it's not just teen drama. It is no, this is slightly more contemporary and is actually dealing with stuff pretty well, and definitely feels like they've left behind some of the stuff they got. The stuff they got dinged for in some of the original games, Hela is not a problem anymore. The dialogue feels right, the acting feels right, that game looks really good. Honestly, Tell Me Why also almost came up in best looking because their interpretation of, or no, their rendering of Alaska is spectacular at moments. It really, really is. Yeah. I get this feeling this might be Fuser because we've had 2 weeks with that game-ish, and it's been incredibly impressive.
Oh yeah, it's so brilliant that I'm staggered by it every time I play it, and it's weird when you find a game like that like stuff like Guitar Hero and DJ Hero and the stuff that has been made before. There's a certain amount of physical presence that is in that requires you to have like an amount of physical skill to make the music sound good. Like you need to be able to play the guitar to play Guitar Hero, and you need to be able to do the DJ Hero stuff. Fuser, it's not effortless, but the game itself is very good at making the music sound good, and therefore takes that off of you, and therefore lets you make more higher level decisions about what the music sounds like.
Yes.
Which is way more interesting to me. Like a music, quote unquote, music management style game would be super interesting.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being like an actual physical presence. I'm a musician. It's more, I want to be in control of this sound. Which
and also,
is
they're abstract. They're not abstracting as much as I thought they might have to, but they're using all the right concepts in the right ways to be like, I could take some of this and look at how to do it in the real world.
They're just taking all of like the physical agency out of it, and therefore letting you just kind of like focus, quote unquote, focus on the sound, which I think is really cool.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Looking at this list of stuff that is still valid, I think Tell Me Why has to be there for me, like based on this list, like unless there's something you feel really strongly about.
So yeah, I don't like the only other thing that like would that I would ever like want to bat for out of this list would be like Risk of Rain 2, but it's not something that I could probably make a convincing argument about without having someone to play it. Like, because it is that game is about mechanics, and it's hard to understand why that game's as good as it is unless you just play it.
Totally. So like I would almost recommend that you play Tell Me Why. Like it does some really interesting stuff with that formula.
But yeah, the actual story of what Tell Me Why is sounds really interesting, and it sounds like they've handled it with a care and quality that sounds very good.
Totally.
It's more about my past with Don't Nod games has
totally
scarred me to the point where I don't know if this is the one that would make sense to play at this point. Like I don't know if they've gotten to the point where they've gotten over the issues that I had.
I don't know. Like Life is Strange 2 sorted a lot of the initial issues I had, even I had, and as somebody who really liked that game. 2 sorted a lot of the issues that were there, where they fixed all the visual stuff that I thought, and the dialogue, the voice, the lip syncing, and all the recording, all the voice acting and stuff that was really, really good in that game. But the fact that it went over 5 episodes means that I really connected with, like it went on for long enough over a longer period of time where I really fucking cared about those characters. The other thing about Tell Me Why is that game came out, it was 3 episodes, they came out exactly 2 weeks after each other, and it meant that you got a much more concise story in a way that like it was closer to the original promise of episodic games, where like it's like a TV show where like, oh, here's this week's episode of whatever. And they really did pull it off. My only concern is that Tell Me Why is probably I think it's probably the best one they've done, Don't Not have done.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they put out Twin Mirror 2 weeks ago, and I've heard 0 people talk about that game, and that's worrying.
They put out another game?
Twin Mirror came out about a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
I don't even remember them saying. Oh wait, that was the thing that was in. Oh, okay, I remember the still image now. Okay,
and I
vaguely remember this.
And a couple of the trailers had a vaguely Alan Wake-ish feel to it.
Yeah. Like but like that's a different game. Like I don't care what that's about if you're talking about Tell Me Why. Like
no, but it's a Don't Know narrative game, right? Where like my hope was that Tell Me Why shows that they're on the right track to really do some special stuff with their follow-ups. And the fact that they put out this other game that I have not heard anything about. Yeah, you're right. Sure. That doesn't affect this actual game. I think
that doesn't affect Tell Me Why.
I think Tell Me Why is in that top 5.
I understand where you're coming from, but if you're talking about looking at Tell Me Why, you shouldn't take
I
think, other game that they've made as
I think Tell Me Why is in there based on this list, which is really weird because it's not in my top 5 because it doesn't have to have stuff that come out this year. But I think that's where it's there. I will say though, like if you like cyberpunk stories, and I think you should look at Cloudpunk. It is really good, and especially now with the first-person cockpit view, it sounds super dumb, but it does change how you interact with that game
But
in a really interesting way.
like I don't mind it being on the list if you think it's better than Tell Me Why.
I
like,
don't think it. Tell Me Why does more.
Okay, that's fine.
Cloudpunk is a vehicle for telling. I mean, I like all of the interaction in that game is like visual novel style stuff, and that is a really impressive city that they've built with a really cool art style that shouldn't work but does, but the stories themselves are like, here's a lot of kind of at some points interconnected stories that you're just doing because the nature of the fact that you're a delivery driver or a taxi driver, like you interact with all these people's lives in really interesting ways, but it's not the same concise start, middle, and end narrative that you kind of want. It is like chunks of stuff that they can add a whole bunch more stories to Novalis with in the future. And I think Tell Me Why, if that's the thing we're talking about, I think Tell Me Why edges it out just as a concise narrative.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I think actually the really important thing I think for Tell Me Why is the fact that it feels either it is the most flexible one of those stories has ever been in terms of where it can end up, or they have done the best job they've ever done about disguising it, because the ending that I saw doesn't make sense if I've made 2 or 3 different decisions throughout, and that's super impressive that they've done that again. Like, I remember that being the big thing about the Walking Dead when this kind of genre first kicked off again, where it was like, it feels like they have written a bajillion endings when actually they've written 3 or whatever it was. Like, they've done a really good job here of encapsulating everything that you've done into a concise ending. And also the idea that, like, the really, really bold idea of going, there are 2 versions of this history with these characters, pick one, and we're not going to tell you if you're right or not. Like, the thing you pick is what you're going for, and those characters live with it. That's what you're going for, super cool. I really do like a lot of stuff.
That's a cool idea,
So our 5 is Hades, Paradise Killer, Final Fantasy VII, Fuser, and Tell Me Why. Tell Me Why is fine to sit 5. That's fine for me.
I was gonna say the way that we've put this on, is that order all right?
It's probably all right.
Because I think that order is all right.
The only thing I'd maybe swap is Final Fantasy and Fuser, but that's only because our conversations during this entire process means I am not going to finish Final Fantasy, because
I'm okay with moving it down. That's
the nature of this game, I think.
The last the everything in the Shinra building and after it up until the point where Sephiroth cuts that hole in space and time is really bad, and it does nothing except inflate the length of that game for zero purpose. It does
feel like a game that had a part in Most Disappointing, which is longer than Best Moment. Being at 3 seems weird. So we swap Fuser and Final Fantasy.
That's fine with it.
Does that look like our list? Like, I kind of expected almost. Like, this is very much like my top 5, or my top 2 are locks, and then the last 3 I had zero idea what was going to happen.
That was the same for me as well. That seems like the way of it this year. It's weird when you get to a point in a year where you know going in that there are some things that have been made that are like so much above the rest that you know that it's like, these 2 are definitely there. Everything else is something that we need to talk about. But
yeah, I think this is it. So I think our game of the year is Hades.
Yes.
With Paradise Killer at 2, Fuser at 3, Final Fantasy VII Remake at 4, and Tell Me Why at 5. That seems like a good.
That seems like a list that we would make. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Again, like, we've talked about it a lot in here, but Hades is such a good game. It's
unbelievable. It was a game that even like 5 hours in, I knew was something that was special.
Yeah.
And even after 100 hours that I've done now, I am so secure in the idea that Hades is the best game of this year, that like it's not even funny like how well that thing has been made. It's a testament to the writing, the art, the the game design, like everything, every single part of it has been poured over and is so well made, and then is also tied together with systems that mean that every single one of the parts all matter to each one of the other parts.
Yep.
In numerous different ways. And then at the very base level, just playing it is a lot of fun.
Yep.
Like, it is a really, really good action roguelike game.
I don't play a lot of games like that, and I've played like 20 hours of that game. It's
it's unbelievable that they can do as many things as well as they have, and clearly have, because that thing is like unbelievable from every angle. Like,
totally, like
it's
like,
unbelievable video game achievement.
And like Supergiant is like one of my 3 favorite studios that I will probably play anything they put out. It's like them and Arcane for me are just some of the best. And
you mean Arcane because you hate Dishonored?
I love Prey though. Like,
okay, that's fair.
That really did it for me. And also because they've got Deathloop coming this year.
Deathloop looks really interesting.
So yeah, my love for Arcane goes beyond my distaste for Dishonored. I think
that's fair.
But yeah, like Supergiant are such an incredible studio that they consistently put out.
Yeah,
like they tick every box that they shouldn't be able to do. Right, like they're not a giant team. They are, as far as I know, independent. Where they don't I don't know if they self-publish, but they basically like maybe they do self-publish. I don't actually know, but they're a small team who have put out where every game essentially is a different genre or reasonably different genre, right? You got try to draw a line between Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre, and then this, and you're just like they are constantly trying different things, and they've pulled off some real magic in making a genre that should not have this level of narrative quality to it work in a way that I care, and also on top of all of that have written in a way that like it really does feel super dumb to bring it up, but it's written in such a way where you're like, these characters are written as adults, and it doesn't feel cheesy. It feels like well-written characters that you care about. And
absolutely.
It's just
and have like real genuine relationships to each other.
Totally. And surprising relationships. And it's a game that I continually, as I went through it, went, oh, they did think of that. Okay. Like every possible thing you can think of, they've already been there and have probably recorded some dialogue for it.
Yeah. Even the smallest thing has already like even the tiniest thing in the world they have probably thought of and done something with. Like it is they mean to do everything in that game and nail it in every part. Like it is it's an unbelievable achievement.
It really is. And I'll also say like Paradise Killer is a spectacular game that came out of absolutely nowhere for me, and just I think I was just grinning the entire time because it feels lighthearted, but goes some really... It's got this real dark edge to it. It doesn't shy away from, like, real grim... Like, it's not even just, like... It's not even just, like, violence. Like, there's a... I don't know, it reminds me of some of the bits of Persona that I liked seeing over other people's shoulders, where like they really go some dark places in there in a way that I really appreciated. And also like mechanically, the idea of doing a detective game in an open world is ambitious for a team of like mainly 2 people with assistance. Is super bold. It's a very lo-fi game in terms of graphics, but has a superbly cohesive style that works really well, despite the fact that they can do it in a way that lets them do it as 2 people.
Yeah.
It's just great. It's just absolutely great. Like, I think it's the only game I have, like, squeezed every single bit of juice out of this year, where I 100%ed that game as much as possible. And I'm sad that there is no more of. It's just, it's so good.
It's a great little thing.
Yeah. But that's us. That's Hades is our game of the year. and these other games are also really excellent.
Oh yeah, they're all great.
And yeah, for me, writing my draft 5, realizing that 2/5 of my most played games did not come out this year is new for me. But
it's a testament to kind of how this year worked. Kind of this year threw a curveball at anybody in numerous ways. So it was...
And I'll also say that's probably going to be the case going forward, because a lot of games are now much longer running than they were before.
Yeah.
You look at something like GTA 4, right, which has been out for... Well, I mean, that game has been out for a year, and it's just not out yet, but it's probably coming out next year sometime. And that game will look by design will look wildly different by the time it comes out, and will continue being supported because that's its entire model.
That's the whole point, yeah.
And like Destiny got revived, stuff like Deep Rock Galactic I've known about for years and have started playing this year. Like, games are becoming longer than the flash in the pan that they were originally, like where you talk about it for a year and then everyone goes on to play something different. Like, these things hang about. So the idea that your 5 may not have all come out this year is not as weird as it would have felt like at the time. But yeah, that's 2020 wrapped up just at the start of 2021 for us, which is good. I make no promises when this is coming out, but theoretically, because there's no video, this should be easier, but we'll see how it goes.
See how it goes. Is there anything in 2021 that we need to focus up on?
January has the Medium Hitman and the Medium for me, which
the Medium as well. Yeah.
The definitely not Silent Hill game.
The Akira Yamaoka music vehicle.
Yeah. Yep.
That game is.
It's also weird because this is the year that I'm going to have to make a bunch of decisions about... It's the first time in a long time I'm going to have to start making decisions about where I play stuff, right? Where stuff like the Medium, I kind of want to play on... Well, no, I can't, because the Medium's an Xbox exclusive, isn't it? Haha. Because I now have the option of playing...
You have to play it on PC.
I have to play it on PC, but I now have the option of playing a bunch of games in 4K on a TV, and I need to start picking and choosing what I do that. So, like, I think if it ever goes on sale, like, I kind of want to play Immortals on a console, because that feels like a console game, and also, like, that game could look real good at high res. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they actually do. And this will be the year where, theoretically, the first batch of, like, next-gen designed games start to hit.
Yeah.
And
I'm just trying to think about what's that. There's, like, Deathloop will probably be pretty cool to see that game is.
Yeah.
No More Heroes 3 is going to be a thing hopefully next year. That'll be a fun one for me.
Right. Oh, right, yeah.
Apparently. I'm told it's next year, but who knows with that game. I thought that game would exist. So
right, exactly. You missed Galgun Returns in January, just saying.
Yeah, of course. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 comes out at some point.
Oh, that Outriders game comes out, which surprising amount of people have come back and said this is not terrible.
There's a listing for Windjammers 2, but that's not a real video game, so
no.
I'm not gonna...
Hey, do you remember when they announced Overwatch 2?
Yeah, that was a weird one. That's an interesting idea.
Yep. This is the year where I finish... This sounds really dumb. This is the year I finish Disco Elysium, because they're putting out that final cut.
And
I'm like...
Wait until the final cut.
Yeah.
So I'll probably play through it again when they put out the final cut.
Yeah. And then here's everything that's not got dates on it yet. 12 Minutes I really want to see. I think that game has been...
Oh, yeah, that thing.
That game's been in the thing for so long.
That's like got people on it now, right? Like actual...
Yeah, like James McAvoy's doing voice and stuff in that.
James McAvoy, that's what it is.
I wanted to very quickly look at my wish list, because...
Daisy Ridley and William Dafoe are the other ones.
Sort by release date. Here we go. There is... Oh god, what else is theoretically coming out this year?
Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. That's a game that might come out this year.
That game might come out this year.
They've said literally nothing about it, but I hope that game comes out this year.
Chinatown Detective Agency is a game I am interested to see. Also Game Deck, which is the Disco Elysium-esque cyberpunk game, which could be interesting.
Fucking Baldur's Gate 3 might come out this year, so
Yep.
like actually out this year, so I don't know, but maybe.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Open Roads, which was the game that... No, not Open Roads, the other one. Route 76
or whatever
it's called.
76, whatever it is.
That game looks super cool.
That Tokyo Ghostwire game comes
Oh
out.
fuck,
Ghostwire
that's
Tokyo.
actually the game that I'm super excited about. That could be really, really good.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff.
Come out.
Yeah. Also, I want to see what happens with Cyberpunk. Like, has all of this gone so badly that all of their DLC plans have now been shunted? Do we see more content next year for that? And also, they've got to put out the next gen versions of that game. So, who knows? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, that's us. Thank you for a interesting 2020. Hope everyone has stayed safe and enjoyed their holiday period, and we'll be back with more stuff soon at some point. But to be honest, we'll probably end up taking a break after this because nothing really comes out for a while. So we'll be back with when we have stuff to show you. But until then, GameEngineStart.com is the website where you can find all of our videos, articles, podcasts are up there. We are on youtube.com/GameEngineStart. If you subscribe there, we get notified when we put new videos up. We're on Facebook and Twitter. If you search GameEngineStart, you find us there. Podcast@GameEngineStart.com is the email address. But yeah, take care, stay safe, and we will see you when we see you in 2021. Goodbye.
Goodbye.